Well, as always, it's great to work with you again, Southwest Wisconsin Technical College. My name is William Illingworth, trainer with Schoology. Today we're going to be looking at grading in Schoology. That's our agenda. As you see it up here on the screen, the two major areas that we'll focus in, actually there's a third, I guess, but we'll look at grade setup. You see that, oops, as I do the wrong thing here. We'll look at grade setup, how to set up your grade book before your semester begins. And then we'll look at grade book and what it is to grade, how to grade things in assignments, et cetera, et cetera. We'll kind of get a good down in the weeds view of grading altogether. As always, my policy is interrupt as much as you'd like. I know you guys have some different hardware setups in the room, so if I don't hear you at first, please just speak up a little bit louder, or there's always lag. So as soon as I hear you, I will stop. So don't feel bad about interrupting me. It's no problem, and I do appreciate it. And for any of those that are still getting logged in, if you're all set, those that logged in a moment ago, I have you set as administrators in the course, so you should see things like our little gears here and stuff like that, stuff that students don't usually see. But I encourage you to follow along today. Some of the first stuff that we're going to do here with grade setup will be background stuff, but then we'll all get to grade. And so that'll be a helpful portion of that. Now, to start, we're going to head over to the grade book. And one of the first lessons about grade book and grade book setup is that you cannot get to the grade book setup until you have entered the grade book. So notice I clicked on grade book on the left-hand side, and I encourage you to do that yourselves. And below it, immediately there, a grade setup option showed up. I heard somebody doesn't have gradebook as an option. Are you?
Sheila Martin does not. Yep, Sheila said she doesn't have gradebook as an option.
Do you guys see it? Anybody else see it?
We're still not logged. It's still, our network is just spinning here.
Oh man.
Click on grade. Right. Yeah. So for some reason, go here. Maybe this one right here for a second. Yeah, just go there and see if he sent you. No. Click on this one. This notification.
Now, what I'm concerned about actually is, and this may be something that's happened on my end, so we'll see. Helen has made a comment that hers says private access, and you guys are not seeing the grade book itself. It may be that some settings have been changed in this system that are not letting you guys as outsiders see my grade book. Because you're not actually members of my school. There are ways to preclude that kind of access through permissions, and this Wellington Clinton school is shared by many people, so it's possible that that's the case.
Now it's back.
It is? Good.
We just kind of needed to refresh a little bit.
Great.
I can't even get into anything.
There we go. Helen says that she's got in now too as well. While you guys are working on that one or two things there, Betsy did post a comment, and I'll flip through that here. Betsy asked, can we cover how to set up extra credit opportunities? We'll see what we have for time towards the end of the session. That might not be something that we can address because it takes a little bit of finagling with how you design your assignments, how you set up your categories. But I will make sure there is a support article that details that. I'll make sure that you have that for after the fact if we can't cover it today. Now, I think everybody's with me, and we're heading to grade setup. So if you can click on that, feel free to head to the grade setup. Understood, Betsy. No problem. I'll make sure that article is in this class, and so I won't archive it immediately. Check this class by the later end of the day and see if that article is there for you. So with grade setup, there are three major areas that we focus on when you are starting out with Schoology in the grade book. There's a lot of options, frankly. There's some options on the right. There's a set here, a set here, a set here, a set here, and they go down further. Most of them are auxiliary and or they improve the grading experience. However, The first thing you always want to focus on is your grading categories. Then you take a look at your scales and rubrics. And then lastly, you might want to check out your final grade settings. Notice I've done a 1, 2, and 3 here. If you just set up your categories, if you just do this first step, you're good to go. Your gradebook will work. You can use weighting, et cetera, et cetera. These two even are what I'd say is auxiliary settings, but they can improve the experience. So grading categories. If you design your grade books to have any sort of category by category weighting, so in my institution it's very common to see something like exams as a category. I'm going to create it for the moment and come back to the settings. But as I create these categories, now I can start to set my work inside of Schoology into certain gradebook categories so that I can get the math going. Now another common category is like a reading response or something to that effect. For the moment, I'm just setting up organization. And that's what I encourage you to do. Start with that. Don't worry about anything else. Get your exams, reading responses. I'll go for one more, say quizzes. Quizzes might be a common category of work in my class. Now, what you'll notice is they are helpful distinctions, and I'm going to jump to the grade book for a second. You don't have to follow me. I just want to show you one thing. When I'm in my category, I have when I'm in my grade book, I have an all categories filter here, and I could now filter by exams, quizzes, or reading responses. So as I build my course and I put content into those categories, I can organize and navigate my grade book even better. So at the very minimum, categories are great just to have organization in your class. The next step, however, clearly if you want the grade book to work for you and to do the math for you, is to weight your categories. And you guys, if you want to add your own, feel free to. Go ahead and add a couple other categories, no problem. I haven't refreshed this page, so if you've been adding anything, you'll see that it's not changing my experience. But I'm going to set the weight categories here, and I'm just going to run down and save my changes. Notice, I'll take that moment to stop. Got to save my changes while we're here. With these three exams in place, or excuse me, three categories in place, and feel free to add more as you'd like, I can now weight them individually. You'll notice that they started with each 100 points, 100 points of weight, but then the grade book is acknowledging that each of those is worth 33% of the overall grade. So if a student failed one category, and for those of you that have been joining this session since we began, I just made you teachers, so refresh your page and you can join me here in this gradebook setup area. If a student failed all of their classes and all of their exams in this category, they would lose 33% of their grade. If they got a 0 completely in this, they could only get a 66. So that's the kind of math you're looking to do. If you do 50% exams, 25% quizzes, and 25% reading responses, you can set that weight here according to the points you use or just a percentage system. And you'll notice that it does the math for you to calculate what that equals. Again, I just changed the weights, so I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and save my changes. This setup piece is fairly simple, you know what I mean? If you know what your grading categories are, if you just go to your syllabus and read them there, it's easy to set those up. However, the next step is really to identify how you want to use them as grading, and we're not going to spend too much time on the math here, but I do want to open back one of these categories and note the settings that are available to you when you create them. Of course, you have your category name and the weight. That's pretty simple. There is a drop lowest feature. Then this is helpful if you have 20 quizzes and you want to drop 2 of the lowest grades. It will do that math for you. Caveat. Big note here on drop the lowest. I encourage you to add that later on in the semester. If you turn that on immediately, as your students submit those first 2 quizzes, it's going to drop them immediately. So your calculations will not be accurate with the drop the lowest until the end of the semester, or at least later on in the semester when you have more quizzes completed that the system can grade against. The last option here to check out is the calculated by drop down, and that shows us for total points or percent. Short and sweet on this topic because we've discussed it in detail before, and there's a lot of information in the Schoology support area on how to work with the calculations. A percent-based category will treat everything in the category as an equal weight. A percent-based category will treat everything in the category as an equal weight. So if I have 20 quizzes in a category worth 40%, or I'll do different math, forgive me. So the math that you see on the screen, this category is worth 50 points. If I have 2 exams in a category of 50% of the grade, they are each immediately worth 25% of that 50% of the overall grade. If I use the total points, I can actually change how much the point value is of the exams themselves and change the weighting. That's the short and sweet of them. There's a little bit more involved in the math and to understand the difference, because depending on which one you use, you can actually change an overall grade fairly dramatically. The example that Schoology shows in the support document is a difference between a 60 and an 82 final grade. So I will make sure that you have that support document as well for review, but that's just something to be aware of when you're working with categories. The next tool here to look at briefly is scales and rubrics. I'm not sure if you guys have a standard scale for your institution, but if there's even standard scales per department, those might be visible there for you. Notice in mine there's the Schoology defaults, which are numeric and A++, and then there's a Wellington Clinton College, WCC, standard scale. That's helpful to refer to, and if you guys have a standard scale, it's always good to use them. But if you need to, you can use the add button on the right-hand side to add your own specific scale. So if an A is an A+ is a 99 and 100, you can set that, and then an A is 94 to 98, and then an A- is 90 to 94. You can create these scales here, setting up the letter grades on the left-hand side and creating any number of ranges. So if I add another level, notice that it continues to add this so that I can keep putting in whatever my grade system is. The benefit of that, and why I highlight that, is if I open up this WCC standard scale, notice that an A is a 94 to 100, an A- is a 90 to 93, a B+ is an 87 to 89. Now that I have that scale in place, if I align it as my final grade setting, when my students see their grades in the grade book, it will show them that alphabetical number. Instead of it just showing you got a 96, you got a 95, and then they have to go back to your syllabus and see is that an A, B, or C. If you set that scale up here and you set it as a final grade setting option, it will display to the student in the grade book they have an A in the course. They have an A-, a B+, etc. So it's helpful. Like I said, the categories you need to set up the grade book, and you need them to have the grade book do the mathematics for you according to your percentages. The scales and rubrics just kind of improve that student experience. And so they're not necessarily the first steps that you need to have them, but they are very helpful. I'll show briefly here a rubric, and so we'll see one in action in our grading in a little bit, but you'll notice here in my rubric I can have pretty much any number of criterion. I can add learning objectives. I can change the numeric structure. So notice I can take items out and I can add items in. So I can change this one scale that was on a 1 to 4 scale, now it's on a 1 to 5 scale. And as I navigate this area and change my criteria and my grading scales, the total points will change. So let me add another field here. You see the total points are currently 17. I'll add a field. And now it's going to come up to, let's see, I got to make this a different number. It brings it up to a total points of 18. So I added a 1-point scale. If I change one of these guys, say to 10 points, it's going to bring it all the way up to a 24. So very helpful to know what's available to you there in rubrics. That was looking at a created rubric. If I use the add button and click on rubric, all I see is an empty space where I can begin to create that as I'd like it to be. Any questions about grade setup before we skip into gradebook and grading itself?
Yeah, I do have a quick question.
Sure.
On the scales, like on one of my courses, I've got 3 scales, letter grade 90, 80, 70, letter grade 92, 84, letter grade 93, 85. Can I, A, delete any of those because I only use one of them, or B, can I change the name of it to say social science grading scale?
You can do both depending on whether or not they're your scale or a system scale. Notice my little lock here. If I have a little lock, then it's a system-based scale, and that's something that your Schoology administrator facilitates. So they might be able to remove them if there was some sort of policy or institution decision, but if the institution provides those scales and is going to keep those scales, then you will always see them.
Do you guys have those in every single course? Those are the 3 grading scales that are used across campus. So yes, they are in every course.
And the benefit of that, as MJ just, or at least MJ or Kim, forgive me, I'm not familiar with your voices just yet, but
Yeah.
as someone responded to that, thank you, Kim. If your scale aligns with one of those 3, feel free, click it and open it up. If it aligns with yours, then no need to even make your own. You can use that one. I think that's a very helpful thing to have those scales built in. I do understand, if you had a list that becomes pretty long here with a ton of scales, it can be tough. But the benefit is that if you add your own scale, it will always be in the last position after all of the system scales. So something to work with the organization purposes, but if you have your own made scale, and I'm going to make a test one here just to show. Let's see. Must include a value of 0 because it's a range, right? Let me give that. Oops. I like what it's doing, actually. It keeps showing me these error messages, so make sure you watch those in the future as you're building them. There we go. Now that I have a test scale that I've created and somebody else created the social science one here, notice I can use a gear on the right-hand side. And that's what tells you whether or not you can manipulate it. So you want to watch for those. One thing I did forget about, and this is actually a helpful tool, why I do recommend building the grade book first is that once your categories are set, when you're creating materials later, it's easy to just simply align them to the correct categories. To complement that, however, there are these stars on the right-hand side of both of these fields. Starring something will make it a favorite in the course creation process. So notice I just selected reading responses and WCC standard scale as my favorites for this course. I'm going to save my changes. We're going to come right back here in a moment, but I want to show you if I add any gradable material now, that includes an assignment, test quiz, or discussion. When I open up the settings, it's going to prefer immediately that reading response category and the WCC standard scale. It's saving me 2 clicks in the long run. Right? If I didn't prefer those, they actually start at 0 and they start at numeric. So every time I come in here, I'd have to come in and set reading responses, and I'd have to set WCC standard scale. We'll see a little bit more of that in the future, but that's just to highlight for the moment why these stars are here to set your favorites, and as well to emphasize the point of build your grade book first. It takes 5 minutes, get it set up for each semester, and then you're good to go as you design everything else. Other questions about gradebook setup before we take the next step?
I think we're getting it.
Great. Feel free at any time to interrupt me, as always. Oh, before I leave, the last note. Okay, notice the copy settings button in the top right here. If you build your gradebook once, never build it again. Set up your category, set up your grading scale, set up your rubrics, and then you can use this copy settings button in any course that you have a gradebook to copy all or a few of those pieces. I can uncheck any of these if I'd like to. and then send it to as many of your courses as you'd like. So that's even better. Maybe you know you have a rubric you use in all your classes. Maybe you know you have a scale that you're going to use in all your classes, or maybe you use a very simple category design and it's going to be something you'll reuse and maybe add or subtract one or two things to in most of your classes. Build the most uniform class first and then copy those settings out all at one shot. This is also what you would use to set up a course semester to semester. So if you finish your course for this semester, you're starting it for the fall, grab your course settings before your course archives and copy them forwards into the next course.
William, I know this is a little just a sidebar off of that, but is there a way, like I'm a new admin after they did the initial rollout, been added in. Is there a way that as an admin I can do that copy settings function across? Because right now, once a teacher gets, if their system's up and I'm sitting next to them, it's easy to show them. But for me to like copy, you know, I literally have to, you know, go in and join the classes quick, and then I'm able to copy things across classes like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would just think as an administrator, I can see all the courses, but I literally have to go join each one individually. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'll save you one step at least. You don't have to, so let's speak of this class that I'm looking at here, and this is good for your instructors to know as well. Let's speak of this class as my origin class, and next semester's class is my target class, okay? You as the administrator, you're right. You always have to enroll in that target class because the system, even though you have admin view where you can jump into courses and see things, the system doesn't know that you should be an admin of the class, right? It's only letting you see, technically. It's not ever letting you own the class as an administrator until you enroll. So you do have to enroll in the target class, but for you as an admin, you do not need to enroll in this origin class. You do need to come to it and find the settings, but you know, if you've been enrolling in both, at least you can save yourself that step just to enroll in your target class and then copy from the origin class. The benefit too for the workflow and the sake of professors, so I've kind of gathered from you guys that you have an instructional design crew and an administrative crew that's assisting the faculty a lot, which I really think is valuable and is really important for implementation and buy-in. But eventually you're going to even get those who are just on their own timeline, so it's good for them to know. All they have to do is find their courses drop down, go to their See All, right? Find their archived course from last semester, 2 or 3 semesters ago, and use this copy settings to bring it from origin to target class. Very easy that way, I believe. I don't have a silver bullet, I regret, but you know, hopefully at least that can save you some time.
That's great, thanks.
Yep. At any time, oh, now notice I talked about the final grade settings here. Maybe I selected at one point, but I never saved it. So I'm going to set the WCC standard scale, and I'm going to scroll down here and save my changes, and that should wrap us up here in the grade setup. Now, heading over to the grade book, feel free to follow me there. It's on the left-hand side. Notice my grade book is empty. However, I did note for you guys when we started that I have preloaded content, and I have I've preloaded materials, and I've had the students, you know, enter some fake stuff in there. What I want to do is I'm actually going to start at the end of my agenda and work backwards. When you have a situation where you create materials and nothing's showing up in the grade book, right? Because this will happen to you as faculty and as administrators and support staff. Somebody's going to call, or you're going to have this experience where nothing shows up here. It's empty, blank. The number one tip, the number one tool for finding out what's going on is to use the 3 vertical dots on the right-hand side and the top option called Bulk Edit. The Bulk Edit contains all of your materials in the entire class, every setting that's important to them, and we'll make sure that they show up here. So if you're with me, feel free to click on the 3 vertical dots and then click on the Bulk Edit option in the top of the row. From this point, now I don't have a very big course, but you'll notice I have my 4 items that are graded. They're also all 3 listed as ungraded. They do not have the correct rubric, or excuse me, scale aligned. And there's no due dates. The other thing to watch for, and in this case, you'll notice my spring semester term is selected here in the grading period, but sometimes if something doesn't show up in the grade book, it's because they're in a no grading period. So I'm going to leave all but one of these in the grading period. I'm going to show you that in a moment. I'm going to leave this in no grading period. But then the things that we want to check real quick for our testing and our grading is these two fields. So I'm going to go to category. I'm going to put my assignments and exams. I'm going to put the quiz and quizzes. And put the cats versus dogs in reading response. So right there in one shot, instead of having to go track down each of the materials and edit them individually, I've changed all of their categories. My one item here has a rubric, so I'm going to leave that, but I'm going to assign my WCC standard scale to all of my options here. Save my changes as always. And notice two things. One, save changes worked, which is great. I've got my changes made, but now I've made this no grading period item. I'm doing that to show you intentionally here. I'm going to jump back to our grade book. Feel free, if you want to join me, follow this link in the top left of the area. It'll take you to the course homepage, or you can always use the courses drop-down. But back in the grade book, there we go, missed. You'll see that 3 of those items are now showing up, but that 4th item, which does not have a grading period, is listed here under my filter. If I go to that no grading period filter, I can still find it. Here's my 4th item. It's not technically in a period. It's not being calculated in the context of the overall grade either. It's outside of everything else. So I want to jump back to my bulk edit real quick. I'm going to switch this to the correct period and save changes. System admins, and those working support staff, Kim, MJ, etc., Beth, you need to know that step. It's going to happen a dozen times at least, just as people get started, that grading period won't get selected, or there's a system setting in place, or whatever it is. If you save yourself the time and check for that first, you'll always be able to fix this and find that missing assignment. I updated the grading period, and now all 4 show.
Hey, we have a question here, William.
Yep.
So if I'm creating now my course for the fall, and I'm using my current course for the fall course, would you suggest in the grade book to just leave so that students don't have access to the information? Because once they're registered, they'll have access to the information. Should I just leave the grading category blank?
So just to confirm. Sure. To confirm.
The grade period as
No grading period.
no grading
Right.
period, so
Right.
they don't have access to the assignments and stuff.
Just to confirm my understanding, you're saying if you're in your spring semester course and you want to prepare some things for the fall semester course, is that the context?
Yes.
Okay. I actually recommend that you do not create content in a spring semester course for your fall semester course while it's live. You're right, you don't want the students to see it, but the idea is that this spring semester course is a legacy copy of your course. Like once it's done, the students' grades are kept perfectly, their submissions are there. It's always an infinite, it's a historical repository of this iteration of the course. And why I suggest not designing in it is, what if you accidentally delete the final exam and you're not paying attention, and that content is lost in the legacy course? You know what I mean? My recommendation, if you're building for the future, is always to use your resources and your personal resources to build things and prepare them, because, and I'll take this quick aside here. It takes me 1 second here. I'm in the main course page. If I'm, say I'm in mid-final exam week there. So I'm not done the course yet, but I'm close. So most of what I have designed is what I'm going to want. Finals week, I just use this save course to resources button. And now I can work in my resources on the course without impacting my historical data. And then when it comes to your false course, when you have that shell and you can put the new content in there, you can just take it from the personal resources down to that target course. Now, to answer your original question, I would say yes, you probably could what you're speaking about. Maybe make a grading category that has 0 weight and make things unpublished, right? So that's the setting when you're creating items. You can make them unpublished with the green icon here. And then you can access the grading options here, and you can set that grading period. So you could set it no grading period and unpublished. You're right, that is going to hide it from. But I feel like that's a dangerous workflow. It's something that you'll just want to figure out for yourself as an instructor, and maybe work with your support staff to determine what really will become the best workflow for you guys as an institution. Any follow-ups to that, or does that help?
No, I think we've got it.
We've got it. Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, so to catch up with the agenda, here's the place where, okay, I have my assignments, whatever they are for the semester, they're there, and feel free, if you're in here with me, you can click into any one of these cells, and notice I get a little flag here with the scale, and just start assigning grades. No problem. Here's a rubric, right? I clicked on the rubric, and it's going to pop it up for me. There I've just given the student a 15. This is a quiz. I can override the grade there. So I'd like to say that that's a fairly easy process, and you'll notice as soon as I selected each of these grades, the total grade calculated. However, we're going to, in a moment, step out of the grade book and take a look at each of those. This is not in context of the assignment. I have not read Alex's assignment. I have not looked at Alex's discussion. I have not checked Alex's quiz, right? I've only done things from the grade book. So know this, that you can grade here if you'd like to, especially if you have something that you might be doing in class that you're grading through Schoology. You know, you've taken a paper, you've taken a presentation, you're just going to put a grade in here later. But most of these items, we're actually going to go to the original. Let's see if I can clear this out. Yeah, all I got to do is uncheck these. We're going to go to the original item itself to get the grade. Oops. Let's see if I can go. I can't get rid of this, can I? Save. Now that I've graded Alex's cats versus dogs, it's not coming away. So maybe that's either a momentary glitch, or I don't recall if that's a feature about rubrics or not, but we can check that out. If I have this assignment, and actually I'll encourage you here to follow me back to the main page of the course. If I have an assignment where the students are either emailing a paper, you know, they're submitting the paper electronically through Schoology, or I have them doing it in class, I can grade it in here regardless. Notice I've got reminders on the home page that are telling me, hey, I've got some things that I need to catch up on, so that's helpful. But follow me here on the materials page to the Be a Student folder. I'm going to head into the Be a Student folder, and you'll see that I have my discussion here, all these tools in line. I'm going to go through it one by one. So join me in the top item, cats versus dogs. If you're on another page and you're kind of wondering how to get here, feel free to either use the materials link on the left to get back to your materials page and then navigate to the Be a Student folder. Or here's a quick tip. This little arrow to the right of the materials link is a quick navigation, so you could navigate right to the Be a Student folder. I'll click on that and it'll reload the page. Here I am. Cats versus dogs. So here's the grading experience for cats versus dogs. I have the discussion, who makes a better pet, cats or dogs, and I have my rubric, right? I've created and aligned a rubric here, so the students see it, I see it, very helpful. Now, in both of my cases here, both Alex and Mike have posted their answers. They've used even their extra credit option to get their picture in there. So if I want to grade these, and I notice somebody's already figured it out here, or actually I graded it in the grade book, I can use these icons on the right-hand side. When something's graded, it gives you a check mark, and so I'll remind you I graded this in the grade book, so it's checked. If something doesn't have a grade, it has this icon here, which I'll click on this. It allows me to give a cursory comment to Mike, and I can also click on that rubric, which will pop up, and I can select all of the options I want. Notice if I select these different numbers, it gives me that total point. I'll save that, and now I have those graded. So the benefit here is I've read the discussion, I see it on the left-hand side, and then I can grade it on the right-hand side. I don't have to go back and forth from the grade book to the discussion. I don't have to download the discussion or print it so that I can go grade it in the grade book or anything like that. I can read it and grade it in context. Most helpful when you have a discussion where you have your students replying to each other and you need to see their replies. Feel free, if you're in here with me, kind of click this open. You can test this out and change the grade as much as you'd like to, or play with it, leave a comment on Alex, no problem at all. If you are following along with me, though, I'm going to scroll back up to the top of the page, and there's a next button right up here in the top right of our discussion. That'll take us to the next grading experience. I'm in an assignment now. So using the assignment, I've had the students submit content to me. And in this instance, I just said submit anything, right? We're going to see something else in a moment, but just submit anything you'd like to, kind of thing. So I'm going to click on Alex's name here, and it's going to open up Alex's submission. Notice Alex left me a note on the right-hand side. So Alex submitted to me a picture, and it's actually displaying this picture to me here. I can use the tools inside of the assignment grader to highlight items or check them off. If I right-click on anything, I can change the styling, so I can make it bigger and I can make it green. Notice there, right, I said, oh, maybe take out the course resources, but good job on the What is Linguistics folder portion. There's a number of features here. I don't have really the time to get into all of them, but just check them out. This is kind of the benefit of using the digital submission tool, that I can really interact with the student's submission. The point here, though, is, of course, is to grade. So if I come up to the top here, I can click in and I can either select the letter grade, B, B minus, C plus, or I can type in 75. I can just put in a number. Oh, it's out of 10. So let me give it a 7.5. Notice I used a decimal. Good job. Oops. And submit. I can go right along here using the arrows on the right-hand side, or I can use the images in the bottom, whichever you prefer. I go right along to the next student, and you'll see here, instead of a picture that Alex submitted, Mike submitted to me a whole document. So now I can come in and annotate this document, put some highlighting in on it and things like that, and add some notes. Very helpful for the grading process altogether. Lastly, of course, I have my grade up at the top. No problem there. I'll just type in, he got a 9, so he really did the assignment well. Any questions about this area and this feature of grading before we move on to checking out quizzes briefly? Or if you have questions about discussions, which we just looked at.
Anything? Everybody's good.
Excellent. Notice there I clicked on the X button in the top right. So this takes me back to the assignment I was just looking at. If you've been following along with me, feel free to click that. Great there. Thank you, Chantel. That nice work, writing that in there. Use this next button to follow along with me to the next step. I'll briefly show this. So in this example, I just had the students download a worksheet that I gave them and then re-upload it with their work. So this is just a different workflow, nothing different, but notice this is, I gave them this template, then they put in their responses. Very easy to see what those are like. It automatically shows that doc for you. You don't have to download it yourself and open it anywhere else. Very easy to grade. So I'll give them a grade there. And I'll move along. Next one on is the quizzing. And so what I wanted to show with quizzing today in context of grading is that typically quizzes can be exclusively objective. That means it can have to be multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, and the students just have to complete it and they get their grade immediately. However, notice that this quiz is giving me a little asterisk. It says they completed their attempt, but it's giving me a little asterisk that they haven't gotten a grade yet. That's because I put a subjective question in the quiz. And subjective questions are pretty easy to grade all at one shot. Notice here on the left-hand side, I have a view by student column, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm looking at, this is Alex's attempt, this is Rob's attempt, or Mike's attempt, excuse me. And I can use the view attempts link on the right-hand side to go in and see everything Alex did, or go in and see everything Mike did. However, I want to use the view by question option, and this is the power of quizzes for not just traditional quizzing, but maybe even doing creative things with reading reports or worksheets. I've actually, that case law document you just saw a moment ago in the one assignment, I worked with a professor to take that whole worksheet that people were downloading and uploading and turned it into a quiz where the students just submitted straight through a quiz. Very helpful to organize that way. I'm going to use the view by question. You'll notice it gives me an outline. Question 1 is a matching question, 2 is ordering, 3 is true false. Number 6 here is my subjective short answer question. And if you're with me here, I'd encourage you, come on over to view responses. I'm going to go to view responses for number 6. And at one time and one place, it gives me all the answers to question 6. And so right here, all I have to do is give Alex a 1 out of 1, give Rob a 1 out of 1. When I save these changes, it will give them their total final grade, right? It had graded 5 of the 6 questions because they were objective, but it was waiting on me to do the 6th subjective question. If I go back to the main results page here, now their students' grades are complete. Right? All I had to do was come in and hit that one subjective question, get them all done at one shot, and it publishes the grade immediately to the student. If I open up Alex's attempt here, I'm going to use the gear on the right-hand side to view the whole item, view the whole quiz. Here it shows me his question 1, which was objective, 2, 3, objective, 4, objective, 5. Then it shows me 6 where he wrote it all in. So there's just kind of a couple different ways to look at it, but it's helpful to know that this is a workflow you can use with quizzes to grade them. Now, I encourage you to follow me back to the Be a Student folder here. And I'm trying to run a little bit just for time's sake. I know you guys are on Lunch and Learns. I want to respect that for you. But if you follow me back to the Be a Student item, I want to show you the motivational poster. Notice this is a media album. And media albums cannot be graded in Schoology by default. So if I want to kind of have my students think through some creative content, right? I like this motivational item. I did Monday, I did Tuesday. I'd like to pass go, collect $200, and move straight to Friday, please. Another one here. Problem solving. Have you got a problem? Do what you can where you are with what you've got. Clearly, someone had an interesting time of that. So I've maybe created a motivational poster system where I have my students posting content to me. I was teaching lexicalization once. I used my students, I had them go out and find examples of language and put it into the media album. But what are your thoughts? I mean, I can't grade this, so what is the purpose, right? I need to find a way to add that grade in the grade book. I want to be able to grade it because I've had them do it, but I want to make sure that I track that grade for them somewhere. This is what's going to take us back to the grade book, and we'll see this in process. Notice, since we've done all that grading, right, those grades are present for the students, I'm going to use this plus sign on the right-hand side to add in a grade column so that I can grade that media poster experience, or the motivational poster experience. Add grade column. I'm going to call it Motivational Poster Media Album. I can give it a category, so I'll put it in quizzes. I can give it a number of points. Maybe it was just 50 points. And a number of other items here. But if I create that, now you'll notice I have a place where I could say, okay, John got a 45 out of 50. Alex got that. Mike got a 50 out of 50. Right? So what you're seeing, I'm using that grade column to make a grade for something that's outside of Schoology or for a media album that's inside of Schoology. What I will note, though, is that using this plus sign to create content, I'm going to look at an assignment for a similar experience. One reason that I personally do not like, so this is not any sort of product-based endorsement, but I personally in experience don't like grade columns, is that they don't reset year to year. If I copy a course forwards, a grade column stays in the grade book it was in originally. Assignments, however, they will copy from semester to semester. So there's kind of two strategies here. Depending on what your goal is, if you're just using it once, feel free just to use that grading column. If you know this is something you're going to use semester to semester, I encourage you to use an assignment. You can put a due date on it then as well, like the other tools didn't. The grading column can't have a due date. And the last option to watch for here is this little submissions icon box. I can turn off submissions, and so if I hover over that now, it says submissions are disabled. Students cannot submit something to this assignment. If I create it, it's now here in my gradebook. I can give them a numerical value, but they don't have to submit anything to it. There's no extra information. The benefit of it over a grading column is I can put a rubric, I can put a due date, I can do a lot more with it than just the simple grading column. So depending on your strategy, you might find reason to use both, but it's helpful to watch for. Now here's the wrap-up tools. Here's the wrap-up tools to look at. As I've been hovering over things and working in the gradebook, you might have seen a bunch of these icons that are showing up. And I'm even going to zoom in a little bit here. If you hover over any of these cells, you'll notice that the comment bubble and a flag show up. If you click on the comment bubble, it's something that you can just say, good job, good job to the student, or you can kind of keep track like Mike submitted this 20 minutes late. Maybe you just want to track that, you know, you didn't give him a late time that time, but maybe you just want to track that he's submitting things late frequently. You don't have to display it to the student, so it can just be your own note, right? You can trust that. But that's where you can just kind of leave cursory notes. Now, the other tool, the flag, and I really like this one, this is really helpful for gradebook management, is called exceptions. And there's 3 exceptions that you can use in Schoology. Excused, incomplete, and missing. Excused means to you and to the student, I do not have to take that assignment. It does not negatively impact their grade, nothing. It's just a null value. Incomplete. Now I'm trying to change the grade, so it's giving me a warning. I've already scored this, so if I mark it, it's going to delete that score I gave it. So it's good that you read those, but in the moment I know I'm good, so I'm going to continue. Incomplete reads to the student, oops, I haven't done it yet. I haven't received a negative. I haven't received a penalty, but I need to get on it, right? It's a communication tool for the student. I need to do this. The last one in line is missing, and I think that this is the real kick in the pants tool. Again, it's going to give me my notice. I need to delete the score. That's fine. Missing means 0 grade, gives a different icon, and it negatively impacts the final grade. Very helpful when you're using your gradebook to use those exceptions just to track what's going on. And I'd also recommend use that missing code, the 0 code, when you have students who don't submit. If I do not have a number in one of these cells, Schoology ignores it. So notice I've got a C+. If I put a 0 in here, the grade will drop. If I put a 100 in here, the grade will go up. But if I take the grade off altogether, Schoology is now only grading these 4 items. So you want to use these flags to kind of track how things are working, because there's a lot of options under this view tag here for how you can track down items that are missing or incomplete or etc. It helps you really filter and manage your gradebook very well. I'm going to open it up to questions. I want to respect your time. I know we got started a little bit late, but I know you guys might need to get back to classes or your lunches are wrapping up. So I can stay for a little bit after for your sake, but if anybody needs to go, I want to respect that time commitment.
Okay, sounds good.
Honestly, the only thing on the agenda we did not get to, I just had to review it, so forgive me, is how to review a student's report. There's an icon here on the left-hand side that you can get to every single, I just have to click on each of these icons and it'll take me to Alex's or Mike's grading report that I can see. So otherwise, we did capture everything in the agenda. I just didn't get as much time here for Q&A, but if there's anything, feel free to let me know.
So when we're in that, is there a way to like export a report out of this so that I can print it off and show Alex, because man, he's not doing so hot, so I want to be able to have a document to share with him. I mean, obviously I can pull it up in my office and have him sit here and we could go through stuff, but you know, that takeaway thing that's staring him in his face all the time.
Yep. So Alex can always get to his grade report, and I'll show it here. I'm gonna pull it up. Alex can always come in, and when he clicks on grades, this is the report he sees. Notice too, those flags we use, the language is there. It's not just the icon, which is what we see as the instructor, but it even says excused, it says incomplete. So Alex can always see this, but you're right. You want to call him in. You want to just sit down with the paper piece real quick. You can do one of two things. Actually, if you're on this page, you can just, you know, I've done this myself. You can use your computer's print function and just print this. Notice it's a very readable function. It's designed to do that. Very easy to work with. Or in the gradebook itself, maybe you need to sit down with all of your students, or you want to, or you have just a couple that might need some assistance. Using the three vertical dots on the right-hand side, there's two options. Export is going to give you an Excel file with data, just data. Print reports is going to give you that visual version that we were just looking at. So if I click on print reports, I can select how many or how little students as I'd like, hit generate. And again, it's going to give me this printable, visual, by category user experience. And then I can print, if I hit Control P here on my computer, it's putting Alex's on page 1. It's going to put Mike's on page 2. So it's designed for it to be printable, easy to use, not going to put half of Alex's on half of, Mike's page or something like that.
Right. I'm asking because that would be a perfect feature for, we do a lot of work with the high schools, and when they're doing like course options, courses, or the youth options and things like that, midterm, the instructor has to provide a grading, like a report, and that would be a nice feature for them to be able to print that off and send it along with the document they have to fill out.
Definitely. One of the classes that I taught, for each of my students, I took that report, printed it as a PDF, and just emailed it to them. I said, hey, I know you can check this out throughout the semester, but if you haven't, here is your report. If you have a concern, get back to me. You know what I mean? And I was fishing. I was trying to get 1 or 2 students to reach out to me because there were some concerns. But, it's a great way to use that. And if you're using attendance and things like that, you can get those same reports to print those out and send them to the students as well.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions?
I just added another column right next to my extra credit quiz, and it keeps showing zeros for grades. And I mean, it's really clunky, so I've got to go back to their actual quiz that they did, and then put the points in the grade form.
So Sheila she's just kind of talking. So she has a quiz that's extra credit that she doesn't want it. Why wouldn't you just have it put in and not put in a grading period?
If you don't put it in a grading period, it won't be calculated at all.
Okay, so she just put an extra grade column in then to grade that quiz, where she could actually put in the score. But so what she wants is not everybody's going to take this extra credit quiz, so she doesn't want it counted in the final grade for everybody.
Right.
Towards the. Why wouldn't it just be though if you have a point total? If somebody doesn't take it, it just doesn't add points in. If you use total points.
Understood. If you're using the point system, right, it does try to calculate those points. If as long as someone doesn't complete it, though, as long as it remains empty, it will not calculate it against it. So it is going to show those points. It's going to show the absence of the points when you're using a total point setup, and that's the tricky part about using point systems in this context with extra credit. But then the what I just did actually, and I'll bring it up here to show for those in the recording after the fact. I put in the how can I give extra credit feature support document and the difference between total points and percentage categories, right? This extra credit article outlines that the best practices are typically using like an extra grading category where it's 0% and putting items in there and using grading columns or assignments without submissions to track the points there. And then I'd even say maybe even connecting it with an extra grading column at the end of the semester where you're typing in a grade. Like there's a couple of steps that are involved, and so managing extra credit in eCampus, in Schoology, is just that. It's managing. It's not necessarily I'm just going to give extra credit because of, like you said, you're seeing these points and it's negatively impacting your point setup. So there's some tips in here about how to best set that up to save yourself any hassle with the math, as well as display the correct information to your students.
Awesome, thank you.
Definitely, yeah. That's been a tough one to wrestle through at my institution, and it kind of takes some time, and you have to come back sometimes and reevaluate the extra credit policy and identify, is this something that's really mathematically working? You know, am I just trying to give them a point on their entire grade, or am I trying to kind of factor in 0.25%, 0.25% of a grade? And that's not, it gets funky sometimes. So just follow their suggestions there because they've got the best practices that have been honed down. Otherwise, as I said before, I will archive this course. I'd encourage you and ask you if you could to take the post-session evaluation. It really helps me out. I've gotten the feedback out from the past, and it's helped me identify when to do more hands-on stuff, when to do more QA stuff. It really does give me good feedback, so I'd appreciate that. But otherwise, that's a wrap for today.